Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. The bid by the state-owned Chilean mining company to grab 49% of Anglo-American's Chilean mining assets will deprive the South Africa-created Anglo of some of its planned copper income stream, says the Royal Bank of Canada. Mining Weekly editor Martin Creamer tells us more. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks, Shannon.
After Anglo has done all the hard work at Los Bronces project in Chile, Codelco is planning a multi-billion-dollar discount for 49% of that mine. What's the story here?
Well, this is nationalisation by stealth, and it's the worst possible opportunism. And what has happened is that you have a state-owned copper mining company, Codelco, which is a bit on a downhill slide. It is not producing the copper that it should be. So it starts to look around opportunistically, obviously under a new CEO. Goes through all the paperwork, historical paperwork, and it finds something that's 33-year-old. It's 1978, a deal done with Exxon, not with Anglo-American. And it looks at that and says, oh, well, we've got an option. We've got an option to buy at a discount. So what we'll do is we'll offer Anglo-American, $6.75 billion, which we'll borrow from the Japanese because they'll take an offtake of copper. And we're going to get the Los Bronces mine effectively for nothing because, if you look at the other analysts that have valued Anglo-American's South American assets, Anglo Sur, they put them at about between 18 and $20 billion. So if you cut that in half, they should be offering at least close to a halfway point because they're also going to inherit, copper at a nice time after everybody else has done the hard yards. So there must be some premium on this. You don't go for a 33-year-old discount operation opportunistically. And when you look at it, Anglo-American is a South African-created company. It was created here in 1917. A lot of the shareholding here is now disadvantaged South African, previously disadvantaged South African. I'm saying that these are black South Africans whose pension fund money and provident fund money are being invested in Anglo-American in quite a substantial way. There are also South Africans investing in quite a substantial way, and the rest of the world is investing in Anglo-American. Along comes Codelco of Chile, and it dares to seize and grab these assets to the disadvantage of our maybe poorest South Africans. How dare they? Our diplomats should be banging on the door of Chile and saying, hang on guys, no nationalisation by stealth, because this is out of the question what they're trying to do here. It is disgusting. It's the ugly face of Chile coming out.
Do you think that they could possibly still take it over but at a better price?
Well, look, I think that what they should have done is they should have turned their own assets to account. They've been in Chile a lot longer than Anglo-American. They wait for this South African-created company to come in and invest a lot of money in a new project at a time when copper is the flavor of the month. And then they force the sale. It's not a negotiated sale. They force it because they're state-owned. And because they're slipping back. And, I think it's unacceptable in global terms. This is by no means a voluntary sale. This is a forced sale. We've got Julius Malema here wanting to nationalize our mines. He's having to march through the streets. These guys don't tell anyone. They just come in, they evoke a 33-year-old piece of paper, pull it back onto the table, and they seize assets at a time when copper is very much a good commodity. They've had it there all the time. They have mines. They have a mine over the fence from Los Bronces, which Anglo-American is going to commission before the end of the year. Why didn't they come in earlier when there had to be investment in there? When you had to put in the $2.6 billion, why didn't they come in at that stage? No, they wait opportunistically. They look over the fence and they see, wow, this is the time to get it. We cash-strapped now. Why are we cash-strapped? Because our country wants dividends. So it's a state-owned enterprise. It has to pump dividends into the people's pockets. Now you've pumped your dividends out. Now you want to be able to get more of a copper flow, because you're going to now have about 10% more copper coming through your books. That would have gone through, Anglo's books for the benefit of all those shareholders. No, now you divert them into your books. So you weaken Anglo, you give them a price which is way below the value. I would say $3 billion below the real value. And then as they get the money, you then tax them on capital gains for another $1 billion. So this is piracy.
Yeah.
This is piracy in its worst form by a country that should know better. And they are taking the food out of the mouths of our poorest people. And I think they need to be really challenged on this by our diplomats. They need to go and see them and say, this is out of order. You can't come here and kick our soccer balls when we've got the World Cup and then stab us in the back when you get back home.
Because that's ultimately what they're doing.
That's how I see it.
Yeah. Now, you've mentioned briefly that South African shareholders could possibly be affected by this. What is in the grand scheme of things, what do you think is the worst thing that could happen?
Well, there are terrible things that could happen because Anglo-American has gone into this copper business quite strongly. What they're doing is that they're diverting that potential earnings in copper over time out of the hands of Anglo-American. But they're saying, oh, we're compensating you. But they're not compensating. They're not compensating because firstly it's a forced sale. So how can you say you're compensating? You're coming in a one-sided manner and you're doing this. And secondly, you're then taxing them. So the money that you're giving them, you're taking back.
So they ultimately make nothing from it.
Well, it's not nothing, but it's virtually, in my book, very little. This is not a deal that is fair. It's an unfair deal, and it does not reflect to the credit of Chile, which is held up, in South Africa as a model of a paragon of mining virtue. I mean, there is BHP Billiton who comes here and says, well, we're going to put $12 billion into Chile because their administration is good. I don't think it's good. I think this is robbery. This is forced selling and then taxing and depriving shareholders of a revenue stream over time.
Now, Codelco is tapping Japan's Mitsui for the money to pay for this transaction. What's that story?
Yeah, another tricky little deal. You have a person leading Codelco who was with BHP Billiton, absolute opportunist. That's the best thing you can call him. He comes in there trying to make a name for himself, trying to say, I can put our copper mine back onto the top of the world pile. He's just, it's selfish career-wise. He's wanting to look good. And, he's then doing this little deal with the Japanese, who will then lend him this money on the basis that they will also have offset of copper going to, and he's also got the opportunity to raise funding by selling this back to them, by selling some of the shares back to them. So then he can fund his aging mines. He's got these aging mines, he's got problems there, he's having to give all his dividends to the Chilean people. Oh, fine, we'll give you the dividends and we'll steal it all from the rest of the people. And I think it's out of line. And I think he should know better, coming from a global company like BHP Billiton and then looking so narrowly at only Chilean interests and ignoring South African interests of people who invest in Anglo-American through their Provident Fund and pension funds, and also the rest of the global shareholding.
Now, do you think this is a case of Anglo shareholders contributing to the revamp of Codelco's aging mines, as you've mentioned?
That's what I think. I think that he's needing cash now to make himself look good. Why have they allowed Codelco to slip like this? We know that, coming up in the future is going to be Central Africa, DRC, with copper of much higher grade, that their grades are declining, that their output is declining. They have fallen asleep at the wheel. Now, you don't start seizing other people's hard work just because you've fallen asleep at the wheel and you want to look good, in your country. This is the face of Pinochet the former dictator in Chile, now emerging again. It's a horrible face of Chile. And I think that they should do the right thing now, and the Chilean government should tell Codelco to walk away from what does not reflect to their credit at all.
Well, let's hope that the South African government hears that too, and the diplomats do indeed go knocking at their door.
I hope so.
Thank you very much, Martin.
It's a great pleasure, Shannon.
That's the show for today. Join us again next time for more news and insight into what's happening in the mining world.